The story begins in a shopping mall where Li Tian, the main character, was shopping while listening to the news. In Z City, there had been many cases of animal attacks, so people were advised to avoid going out at night. The authorities were looking into the situation to prevent panic. Then, an emergency report came in about a large number of people in X City getting sick from an unknown virus. The media kept reporting on the situation. Tian picked up some canned food, thinking it would be a safe stock item. While waiting to pay, he overheard two women talking. One mentioned an elderly man from the Li family who had been healthy but suddenly died. The second woman asked if it was because of the flu, and the first woman confirmed it, saying the man hadn't survived for 2 days. The second woman said many people had gotten sick lately, and wondered if the government knew the cause. She thought the world was becoming more dangerous. As he loaded everything in his truck, Tian then recalled all the things he had bought. He needed to get diesel for his car and go home to cook for Han, using the deer he had hunted earlier in the day. As he drove, he called a girl who asked about their future. Tian said he would find a job that would make her proud, and she agreed. Then he told her he couldn't leave Han in the orphanage. The girl got upset and pointed out that Han wasn't his real sister, warning him not to talk about marriage if he was going to bring Han along. Tian insisted that Han was his little sister and part of his family. The girl asked why she should raise a child as hers. She had already been through enough with Tian. She then gave him an ultimatum. If he didn't take her seriously, they should break up. Tian agreed, and she hung up. Suddenly an animal ran toward Tian's car, splattering blood on it. Tian stopped and thought the animal looked like a dog, but upon closer look he saw it was a sheep. The sheep had a head injury and trembled with bloodshot eyes. Tian was surprised it was still alive. The sheep then walked into the bushes. Tian decided not to report the incident to the police and moved on. When Tian got home and started unloading his shopping, Han came out with their pet dogs and called for Tian. He asked her to slow down a little. She noticed how much he had bought and offered to help carry things inside. He gave her a small pack of snacks as they walked. Han told him she had finished all the tasks he had asked her to do, like feeding the animals, changing the water, and watering the crops. Now she was hungry and looking forward to the stew Tian had made. Tian suggested making a carrot and venison stew, which she agreed to. As she spoke, Han turned around and saw their white dog eating their crops. She hit the dog and scolded it. Then the buffalo they were raising stared at them with red, bloodshot eyes. Later, while they were cooking, Han mentioned that she had never seen a solar eclipse before. She asked if it was true that the sky would get as dark as evening. They had heard on the radio that a much-anticipated total solar eclipse was coming soon. As Han ate her meal, she told Tian how tasty it was, and said his cooking was getting better, just like his hunting skills. Tian explained the eclipse to her and reminded her to use the special glasses he had given her to watch it safely. Suddenly, a countdown started from 10. Han pointed outside and asked Tian what was happening. He was shocked to see a dark object blocking the sun, making everything as dark as night. Han was surprised and began to feel cold. The black dog started barking nervously, and even the radio signal was disrupted. Feeling scared, Han urged Tian to check what was going on outside. When Tian opened the gate, he was hit by a strong blizzard, which was strange since it was summer. He quickly told Han to go inside and promised to lock up the cattle and sheep. He asked the dog Bai to stay with Han. Han, shivering from the cold, told him to hurry. Tian reassured her and ran to secure the animals with hay. As he fought through the harsh wind and snow, Tian asked Hay if he was okay. Then Tian looked up and saw the sun shining brightly again. Confused, he wondered why the weather was acting so strangely. Hay suddenly barked in a specific direction, and when Tian looked, he saw his cow with glowing red eyes. Fear washed over him as he stared at the strange creature. As the cow rushed to attack Tian, Hay quickly jumped in to stop it. Tian searched frantically for his compound bow nearby. He spotted it lying on a log and grabbed it. The cow knocked Hay aside, making Tian take aim. Just then, some system interface appeared before him, which left Tian confused. He got taken aback and released the arrows which flew toward the cow's head. Tian celebrated as it should have done in the cow, but the animal was still standing. Tian was shocked that the cow wasn't stopping. He felt something was wrong and realized he needed more time. A warning popped up on a screen, saying he had 0 ammunition left, but there were 3 live targets nearby. Ignoring the warning, he grabbed his bow again, only to find it empty. The cow knocked him down. Hay came over barking and pulled Tian toward the house. Tian realized that if the cow had mutated, Han might not be safe inside either. Inside the house, Bai's eyes turned red and he growled at Han. Han was confused and wondered what was wrong. Suddenly Bai lunged at her, but Tian rushed in just in time. He kicked Bai away, grabbed Han, and lifted her in his arms. He told her he would take her somewhere safe. On the way, the system window appeared again. Tian brought Han to a safe room and told her to stay inside. He explained that Bai was dangerous now and made her promise not to leave. After locking the door, he checked the screen again. The number of living beings nearby had increased to 4. Suddenly, Bai attacked Tian from behind, but Tian managed to lock Han inside the room before turning to face Bai. He came over to help Tian, and Tian praised him for being brave. Tian then told He to keep Bai busy while he handled the cow that was still coming after him. Grabbing an axe, Tian stood near a tree and waited. The cow charged at him, but Tian dodged at the last second. The cow's horn got stuck in the tree, trapping it. As Tian prepared to strike the cow, Bai suddenly bit into Tian's neck. Tian struggled to fight back and wondered if He had been killed. Blood dripped from his mouth as he tried to push Bai off. Suddenly he heard a strange noise. He saw dozens of screens floating around him making loud sounds. Even though the noise was overwhelming, Tian focused on protecting Han. In the middle of the chaos, he noticed one of the screens showing a message: Apocalypse Survival Game Match Success. When the apocalyptic game finally loaded, Tian became a player. He found himself at level 1 in a poorly maintained state. As a starting reward, he received an item called the Eye of Truth, and his class was labeled B. To upgrade his shelter to a fortress, he needed 800,000 points. Lying on the ground, Tian slowly woke up, unsure if he was still alive. His clothes were torn and bloodstains covered him. However, to his surprise, his wounds had completely disappeared. Confused, he looked around, wondering where the cow and Bai were. Then a strange feeling washed over him, and he spotted their lifeless bodies nearby. Shocked, he questioned what had happened while he was unconscious. He knew that no ordinary human could cause such destruction. Suddenly, he recalled something. A while ago, when the apocalypse survival game had fully activated, his status appeared in his mind, and with it came a surge of power as if a beam of light had struck him. He gave Bai a punch, sending it flying. Noticing the cow still moving, Tian grabbed his axe and charged at it, chopping the cow's neck. Tian was basically a berserker and finished the cow with one more chop. His mind raced, knowing he died once, but he pushed aside thoughts of what had just happened. Instead, he focused on the strange abilities he now seemed to have, including his body's quick healing and the mysterious explosion he had witnessed earlier. As he tried to make sense of it all, Tian realized this wasn't just a game. The system had fully loaded. His shelter was established, points were assigned, and beginner rewards had been distributed. The system urged players to check their status and prepare for survival. More information loaded into Tian's head without warning. Tian then learned that the first phase of destruction had already started. The second phase would begin in 30 days. The system warned of upcoming natural disasters, and the shelter he had was the only place of safety. His main mission was to survive the game and make his shelter the strongest castle possible. Feeling the weight of responsibility, the first phase had already poisoned the land, making it harder for humans to survive. He felt anxious about what the second phase would bring. Tian glanced on Bai, which had passed out. Based on what he had gathered, Bai and the others must have mutated after eating plants contaminated by radiation. To keep everyone safe, Tian locked Bai inside a makeshift cage and tied him up tightly to prevent any harm. Once that was done, he turned his attention to checking on Han. Entering the safe house, Tian descended the stairs in complete darkness. He tried to turn on the lights, but discovered that power hadn't been restored. His phone had no signal, meaning the communication system was still down. Thankfully, the backup diesel generator provided some light. Using the faint glow of a phoenix emblem on his gear, Tian searched the room, wondering why Han hadn't moved. He soon spotted Han's legs on the floor and rushed over to her. She was lying down, totally passed out. Tian's system confirmed she was just asleep. When she heard him approach, Han woke up. Tian asked why DHE hadn't laid out the mattress instead of sleeping directly on the floor. She said she had patiently waited for him and recalled seeing a bright light before everything went blank. Then she asked if he was okay. Tian assured her everything was under control and told her not to worry. Han then asked about Bai's condition. Tian explained that Bai was hurt and wouldn't be available for a while. He suggested she rest some more, and Han agreed, quickly falling back asleep. While Han slept, Tian thought about the lack of mutant animals in the area. He realized that the system he was dealing with didn't fully match online games he had played before. After some investigation, he found a starting bonus option, but it wasn't what he hoped for. Instead of weapons or useful skills, it required 999 points to activate. Frustrated, he stared at the screen and noticed a question mark icon in the corner, wondering what it meant. Tian also realized that the system's main currency was points. He also discovered a seed which could be planted in poisoned soil, but after checking its cost, he knew it was too expensive to buy more for now. He decided to inspect his supply stockpile at home. However, he knew that anything directly in contact with the ground was likely contaminated. The network was still down, and he figured it would take time to recover. He also doubted the situation outside was any better. Looking at the system window, Tian realized he needed to address the contamination soon. He went outside to burn the remains of the mutated cow. Afterward, he opened the safe house's weapons room and found a neatly arranged selection of guns. After starting the diesel generator, he loaded a pistol and left a walkie-talkie next to Han in case she woke up while he was gone. Driving his car at high speed, Tian unintentionally attracted several mutated animals along the way. He decided to take care of them quickly, but before he could, a military truck appeared behind him. The truck sped past, blocking his path, forcing him to stop. The military truck's machine gun aimed at Tian's car, threatening to shoot. An army scout with a zoom scope watched Tian closely. The soldier then reported that the road surface alarm was lifted. Tian, seeing how the military was nearby, felt that something serious was happening in the city. He also wondered how Zhongling was doing. Soldier then warned Tian that it wasn't safe outside and advised him to go back home. Tian explained that he had left home because he ran out of supplies. He asked the soldier about the current situation in the city. Through a walkie-talkie, someone reported that Area B was under attack by mutant cats and urgently needed backup. The soldier told Tian to head to a government supply point but stressed that the city was very dangerous. He urged Tian to return home as soon as possible. Tian agreed, and the soldier left as military aircraft flew overhead. As Tian watched the aircrafts, he thought about the mutant creatures and the chaos in the city. Even though he had recently separated from Zhongling, he couldn't ignore the dangerous situation. He decided to check on her during his journey. When he entered the city, Tian saw widespread destruction. People talked about another looting incident on XX Street, and he overheard that a woman's body had been found at pawn number Daos X. As he drove through the streets, he noticed that only police cars and ambulances were still moving. He saw two men rushing to load an injured woman into an ambulance. She was barely conscious, losing a lot of blood. A paramedic mentioned another case of lung damage caused by food poisoning and prepared an adrenaline shot. They discussed the shortage of heart medication due to the large number of patients. Many people were infected with the same illness. Nearby, Tian saw a woman begging her husband who was infected to stay awake. They were almost at the hospital, but the man complained that there were no more beds available. The emergency hotline was overwhelmed with calls. Tian realized that the healthcare system was struggling to keep up. The situation was made worse by radiation leaks from nearby power plants. He wondered if he would be able to gather enough supplies to survive and make it through this dangerous world. The police informed citizens that the location had been designated by the government as an emergency supply site. They stressed the importance of following the rules, standing in orderly lines, and avoiding any rushing or chaos. Each person was allowed to buy a limited amount: 5 gins of rice, 5 gins of flour, and 1 gin of vegetables, with purchases verified through valid IDs. Arguments broke out as people fought over their spots in line. One person claimed they had been waiting for 5 hours and deserved to be served first, while another argued that they had only left briefly to use the restroom and were reclaiming their place. Tensions rose when a man, claiming to be the general manager of a local business, tried to push ahead, leading to confrontations. Some individuals were even removed from the line by force. On the edges of the crowd, a young girl cried to her mother, asking for food. Tian was nearby, watching two people argue over who had reached a supply stand first. The crowd remained restless, scrambling to grab whatever they could before supplies ran out. As Tian drove away, heading toward his girlfriend's rented apartment around the corner, a car suddenly sped past him, nearly hitting him. The car screeched to a stop and a man got out, walking over to Tian. The man knocked on Tian's window and asked if he had just come from the supply site. He offered to sell fruits and vegetables, including watermelon, cucumber, pumpkin, tomatoes, and rice. Tian inspected the goods and then told the man he would only buy if the man took a bite of the food first. The man hesitated, looking uneasy, and asked why Tian didn't trust him. He claimed he hadn't been able to buy any supplies for himself either. Frustrated, Tian told the man to leave. The man grew defensive, asking why Tian was being hostile and insisting that he was just a law-abiding citizen trying to make a living. In response, Tian pulled out a gun. The sight of the weapon made the man step back in fear. He pleaded with Tian to calm down, saying they could resolve things peacefully. Tian gave a cold warning, telling the man that if he caught him taking advantage of desperate people again, he wouldn't hesitate to shoot him. The man, now visibly nervous, promised to stop and quickly gathered his belongings. Without saying another word, he got into his car and drove away, shaken by the encounter. Tian went to his ex-girlfriend's apartment building. He climbed the stairs and reached Zhongling's door. After knocking and calling out her name without a response, he started to worry if she was even home. He took the spare key from under the doormat, unlocked the door, and stepped inside. The sight shocked him. The usually tidy room was a mess. Contaminated fruits and medicine boxes were scattered across the floor. Among the boxes, Tian recognized antibiotics from Tianrun Pharma, a local company with a terrible reputation. He wondered why Zhongling had those medicines. There were no signs of blood or poisoning, but it was clear the room had been searched. However, it didn't look like Zhongling's usual organized way of cleaning or rearranging things. Strangely, there was no sign of a break-in or blood from injuries. Everything looked like it had been moved on purpose. Standing in the chaotic apartment, Tian tried to figure out where Zhongling could have gone. The scene shifted to Tian's farm. It was rated as a level 1 shelter, offering basic amenities. The shelter skill reward was the Eye of Truth, which allowed the host to see detailed information about objects and creatures. Additionally, the shelter had a remote control system that provided real-time updates on its status and inventory, even when the player was away. The area covered 30 mu and was suitable for fishing, animal husbandry, planting, and building. Tien realized that he was in a difficult situation. He lived in a rundown level 1 greenhouse and decided to work hard to earn enough points to upgrade his farm equipment, making sure to also focus on anti-radiation measures. As he worked in the fields, Han arrived and excitedly announced that the seeds had sprouted, and He gathered to see the growth, which brought joy to Han. Tien checked the screens and saw that the tomato seeds had been planted successfully and would mature in 48 hours. He was pleased with the progress, noting that the anti-radiation seeds were growing quickly as expected. With more points, he and Han could survive in this post-apocalyptic world. Han had initially doubted the seeds, thinking they had all withered, but she gave credit to Tien for their success. Tien confidently said that he always found a way and reminded Han of the rules he had set for her. She agreed to follow them and promised not to be underestimated. Han repeated the rules: only eat food approved by Tien, never leave the farm without permission, report any unusual animals, and watch He to make sure he didn't eat too much. Tien also told He to listen carefully. When the anti-radiation crops were ready, Tien decided to harvest them. He was pleased to find a bountiful crop, especially the radiation-resistant tomatoes, which were nutritious. They promised to improve overall health, and their shelf life was 30 days. Tien wondered if they could also improve physical fitness and tasted one. Instantly, he felt a warm sensation spread throughout his body, easing the fatigue from days of hard work. In this food-scarce world, the upgraded crops not only provided sustenance but also seemed to offer health benefits. Tien thought about becoming a full-fledged farm owner within the system. This would unlock new permissions, allow him to buy from the mall, and upgrade his shelter, all by accumulating points. These points were earned through an exchange system that allowed crops, livestock, meat, and minerals to be traded. The highest grade items, like Supreme God tier crops, gave the most points. He learned about the point system for different crop grades. Level 1 anti-radiation crops gave 1 point per kilogram. Level 2 ancient medical crops gave 100 points. Level 3 God tier crops gave 1,000 points, and Level 4 Supreme God tier crops gave 100,000 points. The exchange system was crucial for transforming the farm into a top-tier base, and Tien eagerly anticipated this transformation. Tien examined the ancient medicinal grade crops, starting with the carrots. He found that they were 10% mature, as expected for ancient medicinal crops. Upon closer inspection, he saw that these carrots were fully mature and could cure negative effects like poison, illness, and irreversible damage. They could even be stored indefinitely. Tien was excited about their potential for survival. He then decided to sell 70% of the harvested crops for points and kept the remaining 30% as reserves. After confirming the recycling of 200 kilos of radiation-resistant crops, Tien received 2,000 points and found 3 ancient medicinal-grade crops in the warehouse. He was pleased with the result and now had 30 kilos of anti-radiation crops safely stored. To his surprise, Tien received a congratulatory message for completing his first recycling task and earned the title Master of Recycling. As a reward, he got an agricultural robot. At first, Tien was skeptical about its usefulness because of its small size, but he began to wonder if the achievement system could lead to more rewards and useful items. The robot began cutting crops, and Tien was amazed by how it seemed to anticipate his thoughts. He realized that the system allowed him to control the robot directly with his mind. Tien started thinking about earning enough points to exchange for a combat robot that could help protect Han. Feeling proud of their successful crops, he called Han for a meal and asked her to stop watching cartoons. Han and He instantly teleported in front of the dining table. They enjoyed chicken legs together, celebrating their success. Han, though happy, reminded Tien that they needed to be careful with their food. Tien assured Han that they could resume planting and use some of their stored food. He also warned her that if anyone found out about their food supplies, she would be banned from eating for 3 days. Han promised to keep their food secret. Tien then gave He the first chicken leg, thanking him for protecting both of them. Han affectionately hugged He, calling him the best, before letting him go and wondering how Bai was doing. Tien reassured her that Bai was still recovering from serious injuries and couldn't visit, but promised they would play together once he was better. Han agreed and promised not to disturb Bai. Suddenly, Tien saw a warning about an intruder. He quickly checked the monitoring screen and found that the intruder was a 42-year-old man with a threat level of 3. To his surprise, the intruder was Uncle Nan. Tien wondered how Nan had ended up in such a situation. He stepped outside and walked toward Nan, asking why he had come. Nan, smoking a cigarette, slowly exhaled and called Tian boss. He explained his tough situation and asked if Tian had any extra food on his farm. Nan had no other choices. His home had been robbed, his food stolen, and food prices in the market were very high because of shortages. Tian apologized, saying his own food supply was low after a recent crop failure caused by mutations. Even so, Tian gave Nan what little food he had left, thanking him for taking care of his family. Nan, feeling defeated, admitted he had asked many relatives for help, but they couldn't offer any. Tian gave Nan a pack of cup noodles and suggested he try other options first. Nan thanked him and wished him good luck before leaving. Tian thought the food would last Nan for about 5 days, but he was unsure. In times like these, people's intentions were hard to predict. Realizing he didn't need the vegetables in the freezer, so Tian decided to check on Nan that night. He went with Han to Nan's house, each carrying snacks. Suddenly, they heard Nan's son, Xiao, scream. Nan told Tian not to startle Xiao, who was coughing up blood and getting worse. Nan was worried and asked why Xiao's condition was getting worse instead of better. Tian and Han peeked through the window and Han was scared by what she saw. Tian tried to reassure her, saying everything would be fine, but he suspected Xiao had eaten radiation-contaminated vegetables, explaining the fast decline in his condition. Tian also wondered if Xiao, being the best candidate for an experiment, would survive. It would all depend on luck. Suddenly the window glass broke as a pouch was thrown into Nan's house, surprising both Nan and Xiao. Nan became angry and demanded to know who threw it. Xiao suggested they open it carefully. Nan reluctantly agreed and told Xiao to stay where he was. When Nan opened the pouch, he was shocked to find fresh vegetables and food inside. Nan, overcome with emotion, heard Xiao say he wanted to live and was willing to try anything, even lie about his condition. Nan broke down, admitting that even the hospital couldn't help Xiao, but he couldn't bear to see him suffer without trying. Nan convinced Xiao to eat the food, telling him to chew slowly. Xiao screamed and coughed violently for a moment, but then suddenly stopped. Nan was overjoyed at the improvement. Meanwhile, Tian noticed a street light flickering, which meant the power, and possibly the phone signal, had returned. He quickly called his ex-girlfriend Zhang Ling, but she didn't answer. A minute ago, we see a moving car where several men were sitting. One of their phones rang, and they wondered whose phone it was until the owner recognized it as Zhang Ling, who was unconscious on the back of the car. He suggested they turn it off since the signal had been restored. One man asked about their food stash, relieved to know they had enough for a month. They were happy with their choice to follow their leader. The largest man silenced the conversation, saying money and action were the most important. They all agreed. After the incident at Uncle Nan's house, Tian and Han quickly drove away in their car. Han commented on how amazing it was to see Xiao recover so fast. She had seen him vomiting blood before eating the carrot, but after eating it, his color changed from gray to blue. Tian listened as Han described it all in detail, noting how her descriptions sounded like something from the animated shows she loved. Suddenly, a loud thud hit the car. Tian looked up and saw a monkey with sharp claws clinging to the roof and peering through the window. He instructed Han to stay calm and hold on tightly, and she nodded, her face filled with fear. Tian began to swerve the car left and right, trying to shake the animal off, but it clung on stubbornly. He told Han to lower her head, and she obeyed without question. Despite Tian's efforts, the monkey landed in front of the car, blocking their path. Thinking fast, Tian swerved hard, causing the monkey to slam into a nearby rock. Grabbing his gun, Tian stepped out of the car and shot the monkey to make sure it wouldn't attack again. As he inspected the area, he found a pool of blood where the monkey had fallen. On the monkey's skin, he noticed some kind of code written on it. Puzzled, Tian wondered where the monkey could have come from, as there were no breeding farms or zoos nearby. As they drove back home, Tian's mind shifted to the state of the city and how everything had fallen into chaos. Once they arrived, he told Han to relax and watch her animated show while he took care of some things. Han agreed and went to another room, leaving Tian alone to deal with his next concern, Bai. Tian put on a pair of gloves and approached Bai, who was still in his mutated state. He wondered if the ancient medicinal carrot which had saved Xiao could also reverse the effects of radiation on Bai and bring him back to normal. Carefully, he fed a piece of the carrot to Bai, hoping it would work. But instead of a calm reaction, Bai let out a loud, angry growl. Meanwhile, Han was sitting in another room, deeply focused on her cartoon. Suddenly, she heard strange noises coming from where Tian was, and grew worried about how long he had been gone. She rushed to find him and saw him standing nearby, looking tense. Wanting to lighten the mood, she decided to play a prank and tapped him on the back to surprise him. Tian jumped, startled by the unexpected touch, and quickly turned around, relieved to see it was Han. He asked if she had startled him on purpose, and she confirmed it with a grin, teasing him about being jumpy. However, their attention quickly shifted to Bai, who was lying motionless on the ground, surrounded by blood. Han froze in shock, unable to process what she was seeing. Tears welled up in her eyes as she collapsed in despair. Overcome with emotion, she sobbed, questioning why they hadn't been able to save Bai with the same carrot that had saved Xiao. Tian knelt beside her and placed a hand on her shoulder, trying to comfort her. He explained that the carrots couldn't reverse mutations like Bai's, as Bai wasn't just sick, he had changed for the worse. Despite his words, Han continued crying, devastated by the loss of their loyal companion. She couldn't accept that Bai was truly gone, and her sorrow only deepened as she sat beside him. The next day they held a farewell ceremony for Bai and bid him a quiet goodbye. Han remained silent the entire time. As the day grew late, Tian gently took her hand and suggested they head inside. Later, while Han was watching cartoons, Tian interrupted to invite her to dinner, preparing her favorite dish. Han didn't say anything, but she made it clear she wanted him to stay with her in the house, and he agreed. That evening, Tian sat outside and saw a screen announcement about radiation-resistant crops being ready to harvest. He decided it was time to bring them in. They harvested around 500 kilos of radiation-resistant crops and 10 kilos of ancient medicinal plants. After the harvest, a small robot returned from the city, confirming that their crop points had been successfully redeemed. As a result, Tian's old rundown greenhouse was upgraded to a level 2 ordinary house. However, Tian received a warning that his defense shelter was still weak. It was rated at level 3, which meant it could only keep out small animals, but it would be risky against larger threats. The system strongly recommended building a better defense. Tian decided that protecting the farm was his top priority. Since they had harvested enough crops to earn plenty of points, he postponed expanding production and focused on strengthening their walls. He upgraded the wall reinforcements from level 1 to level 2 and bought a perimeter power grid, which improved their security to level 1. With points left to spend, Tian prioritized getting mechanical guards to keep Han safe. He found a level 1 hummingbird drone and a level 2 hound guard robot. Both cost 3,500 points, and Tian calculated that selling some of the grain stored in their warehouse would cover the cost. Confident that he could earn more points later, he went ahead with the purchase. When the hummingbird appeared, Tian tested it and was impressed. It hovered smoothly and shot down fallen leaves with perfect accuracy. Next, he tested the hound's ground combat abilities. He directed it to destroy a large rock. The hound used its beam weapon and shattered the rock with ease. Tian felt relieved after seeing how effective the guard robots were. Later, Tian brought the robots to Han and introduced them to her. He explained that the robot would stay with her and keep her safe. He suggested giving it a name like Bai's, and this touched Han, who was feeling lonely from the original Bai's passing. Meanwhile, in a distant city, a man reported to Liang that they had successfully handled the out-of-control experimental samples. Only one sample, referred to as number 7, continued to grow stronger. It was now capable of penetrating thick steel plates with ease. Liang asked about the situation with Ren, the company's vice president. The man replied that Ren was upset because their request for medical equipment donations had been rejected. He warned that if Ren reported the issue to the head office, it could cause problems. Liang remained calm. He dismissed Ren's concerns, calling her just a girl with little influence. He assured his team that their operations had been kept secret and that Ren wouldn't be able to trace their activities. The man agreed, saying the head office had no idea what was going on. Liang ordered him to keep a close watch on Ren and ensure she didn't interfere. After the meeting, Liang left the room, thinking about the possibility of discovering something valuable, something that could change everything. The scene shifted to Ren, who was walking angrily, demanding to know where Liang was. A lady apologized and explained that Liang wasn't at the company at the moment. Ren's behavior made things difficult for the staff, so they asked her to wait. However, Ren didn't wait. She opened a door and confronted Liang, immediately questioning him about what was going through his mind. She reminded him that the entire southern region's medical system had been paralyzed and said that, as a medical company, Liang should be leading his staff to cooperate with hospitals and donate equipment and medicines. Instead, he was focusing on animal experiments, which she thought was wrong. Liang calmly pointed out that they were in the general manager's office and it wasn't appropriate for her to enter without permission. He reminded her that he was a businessman and that his main goal was to make a profit. In his opinion, no current medical treatments could do anything to stop the worldwide disease. Ren questioned him further, asking what disease he was referring to. Liang reminded her that she was also a shareholder in the company and enjoyed the profits. He explained that if they developed a solution, the financial rewards would be significant. Ren then asked if there had been any progress in his research. She noted that even the Yanhuang federal government hadn't developed any effective drugs yet, so she needed to check his lab to make sure progress was being made. Liang responded with a smirk, saying that creating a cure wouldn't happen quickly. He suggested that if Ren could provide more support and invest more manpower, things would move faster. Ren agreed to visit the lab later to check on the project. Liang assured her that she was welcome to visit and said he would arrange personal escorts to ensure her safety. After leaving the office, Ren was accompanied by a boy who mentioned that the technical team had found her time in the office too short to conduct a full scan. He added that accessing the secret lab's entrance wouldn't be possible for now. Ren dismissed his concern, saying it wasn't a new problem. She asked if he had managed to get any useful information from the captured scientist. The man explained that the scientists had always been blindfolded when entering and leaving the lab, although they did have key cards. Ren appreciated the information and handed him a card. She wondered if there were any other places they hadn't searched and thought that sometimes the most dangerous places could also be the safest ones to hide something. When Ren entered the laboratory, a man introduced himself as Tuzi. He explained that he would be her guide and would show her around the lab. Ren agreed and told him to take her to see the experimental subjects first. Tuzi led her to Subject 7, the only subject from the experimental batch that hadn't gone out of control. The subject's strength had increased significantly, but it remained unstable and showed signs of aggression. However, unlike the failed experiments, it wasn't acting mindlessly violent. As they observed Subject 7, another man approached Tuzi and whispered something in his ear. Tuzi looked visibly shocked. The man explained that something unexpected had happened and asked Tuzi to check on the issue. Tuzi, looking concerned, apologized to Ren and told her that he couldn't continue to accompany her. He assured her that another colleague would take over as her guide. Ren told him it was fine. She explained that her visit was only a routine check and she planned to walk around on her own for a bit before leaving. The other man seemed nervous and expressed concern that they were breaking the rules. However, Ren remained calm and reminded him that they were under surveillance. She assured him that there was nothing to worry about and instructed him to hurry and handle the situation, as it seemed important. Tuzi nodded and promised to ensure her safety before he left. As Ren continued walking through the lab, she spoke quietly through her earbuds to the boy assisting her from a distance. She told him that it was time to take action. The boy, seated in a room with his laptop, confirmed that he had disabled the security cameras. He instructed Ren to check the northeast corner of the room for a hollow spot in the wall that could be pressed. Ren followed his instructions, found the hollow spot, and pressed it. A hidden door opened and the boy informed her that she had only 30 minutes to explore before the cameras would be back online. Ren agreed and stepped inside. What she saw shocked her. The room was filled with large jars containing human bodies. The boy, curious about what she had found, asked for her assessment. Ren, horrified, responded that the situation was worse than they had predicted. The boy asked if he should contact the head officer to intervene, but Ren told him to hold off. She wanted to investigate further before alerting anyone. As she continued walking through the room, she suddenly spotted something even more disturbing: a mermaid floating in a jar. The nameplate revealed that it was Zhongling, Tian's ex-girlfriend. The scene shifted to Tian, who discovered that his radiation-resistant corn was ready to harvest. Han was happy to see the ripe corn, and Tian asked her to help him finish the work quickly so they could have dinner. She agreed eagerly, picking one and saying she wanted to eat grilled corn later. Tian, noticing her excitement, asked if she was already hungry. Han replied that she was too hungry to just focus on picking corn. He smiled and told her to gather some dry wood while he prepared grilled corn with butter. Han was thrilled to hear that. As the corn cooked, Han sat nearby and joked about what would happen if she kept eating like that and ended up becoming a fat pig. Tian chuckled, realizing that her appetite had recently grown bigger than his own. He explained that the special crop could improve their physical fitness. He also told her that since her body was still developing, eating more wouldn't make her gain weight. Han nodded in agreement and happily ate the corn. Tian watched her quietly, noticing how much they had both improved physically after eating radiation-resistant vegetables for a few days. He joked that even if she kept eating like that, she wouldn't turn into King Kong Barbie. The thought made him laugh. Han, still focused on her food, commented that the grilled corn was delicious. Tian smiled and promised to make her a spicy one next time. While he considered their food supplies, Tian felt confident that their shelter could handle any increase in Han's appetite. Even if she started eating as much as Luffy from a cartoon, they had enough food to manage it. Just then, Tian heard footsteps outside. He wondered who would visit at that hour. When he checked, he saw that it was Jia, carrying a bag. Curious, Tian thought it might be food he had previously given to Jia, and wondered what brought him there. Tian approached Xiao and asked why he had come. Xiao explained that Tian had given his family some instant noodles recently, and his father insisted on returning the favor by sending some food to Tian's family. Xiao had brought the food over. Tian told him it wasn't necessary, thinking he had helped the right person. Curious, Tian asked Xiao where he had gotten all the food. Xiao admitted that he found it in his yard and guessed that a relative or someone sneaky must have left it there. Xiao then said he wanted to repay Tian's kindness and had a request to make. Tian encouraged him to speak. Xiao mentioned that he had heard about a new grain shopping center on the southern outskirts that still had plenty of stock. He wanted to borrow Tian's truck to go buy supplies. Tian agreed, but Xiao admitted he didn't have a driver's license. The shopping center was in a remote area not too far away. Tian realized Xiao was asking him to drive. Xiao assured Tian it wouldn't take long. Tian thought about how he hadn't left the farm much lately. He had planned to visit that shopping center in a few days, so he decided to go with Xiao now since the opportunity came up. With the mechanical guards protecting the farm, he felt secure. Besides, Bai's combat abilities were strong enough to handle any small threat. Tian agreed to go but mentioned he needed to be back before noon to cook for Han. Xiao apologized for the trouble. Tian told Xiao to wait while he got the truck. Inside, he instructed Han to stay home and not open the door for anyone. Han reassured him not to worry and praised Bai's strength, and asked how Bai had become so powerful. Han explained that Bai was an upgraded version and demonstrated how it could easily smash through large rocks with a loud bam. Tian reminded her to only use Bai in emergencies, as it could be dangerous. Han agreed and said she wouldn't smash rocks for fun anymore. Tian smiled, ruffled her hair, and promised to bring back some candy from the shopping trip. Han, curious, asked if Xiao was outside and said she wanted to greet him. Tian playfully pinched her cheek and asked if she wanted to show off Bai to someone. Han insisted she wasn't a little kid anymore. She was 6 years old. Tian gave in and took her outside. Han greeted Xiao and tried to tell him about Bai, but Tian stopped her. He told Han to get out of the truck so Xiao could sit, reminding her they needed to leave quickly to get back in time for lunch. As they drove off, Han complained that Tian was being mean and hadn't let her finish greeting Xiao. She went back inside and decided to watch cartoons to forget about it. While they traveled, Tian noticed Xiao seemed quiet. After a while, Xiao asked if it was safe for Han to be left alone at the farm. He was worried about the chaotic state of the world and feared that someone might target the farm. Tian dismissed the concern, saying no one would bother with his poor farm since it had no money or food. He reminded Xiao that Han was only 6 years old, and even though she had a self-defense tool, she wouldn't be able to use it on her own. Tian believed the farm was the safest place for her right now. Xiao then asked if Tian had any security measures in place for Han. Tian told him the farm gate was electrified to prevent anyone from breaking in, and reassured Xiao that everything was fine. Xiao seemed relieved. He pulled out his phone and started typing a message, but when Tian noticed, Xiao quickly put it away, explaining that he had borrowed money from some friends and was worried he might not have enough for the trip. Meanwhile, Han was inside watching cartoons excitedly. She cheered for the Rainbow Warriors on the screen and started making up her own names for their superpowers. She suggested names like Lemon Yellow Super Evolution and Golden Yellow Power. She glanced at her toy Hey and joked that Xiao could join the Rainbow Warriors too. Han giggled as she recalled that the last time she saw Xiao, he looked green at first but now looked red, which she thought was interesting. Hugging Hey, she kept imagining Xiao as one of the colorful characters from her favorite show. Tian gave some money to Xiao, who was confused. Tian explained that he didn't have much money either, but Xiao could take it for now. Xiao refused, saying that Tian had already helped his family a lot and he couldn't accept any more money. Tian insisted, telling Xiao to stop arguing and focus on driving. As they drove, Tian realized they needed to go straight for 500 meters, then turn right 300 meters ahead. After another 200 meters, they would reach a fork in the road, and 100 meters beyond that, they needed to turn right. Xiao seemed worried. Just as Tian was about to turn right, Xiao suddenly turned the steering wheel to the left, saying the road to the right was closed and they should go left instead. Tian felt something was wrong and shouted that it wasn't true. He had traveled that road often, and it was the main road in the area. It couldn't be closed without a major natural disaster. Tian asked Xiao where he had heard that. Xiao said his friend had told him. Tian asked for his friend's contact information and insisted on hearing it directly. Xiao urged Tian to trust him and turn before it was too late, promising he wouldn't harm him. Reluctantly, Tian started turning the car around. Meanwhile, some men noticed the situation. One man said something seemed wrong and contacted others in a nearby car, wondering how Tian could decide to turn back alone. Another person asked what they should do. Chen, the one leading them, replied that he was ready, and their target was near, so they had to stop them. They were ordered by Liang to capture them alive, block their escape routes, and attack from both the front and rear. Xiao then apologized to Tian, admitting that he had betrayed him and it was his fault. He tearfully explained that there was nothing he could do because some people had taken his father. Tian asked him to calm down and explain who those people were and what they wanted. Xiao, crying, told Tian they were from Tianrun, and knew Tian had the antidote for the poisoning. They had forced Xiao to lure Tian away from the farm so they could capture Han and make Tian give them the antidote. Tian exclaimed that Han was only 6 years old and they intended to kidnap a child. Xiao replied that he didn't know, and they had threatened his father's life, leaving him no choice. Just then, a car blocked their way. Xiao told Tian those people had arrived. Tian shouted at Xiao to be quiet, saying everything Xiao had asked was just to test him and find out if the farm was protected. When Xiao had been playing with his phone, he was messaging the other party. Soon, some people with machineries appeared in front of Tian's farm. Xiao apologized again, urging Tian to give them the antidote since there were too many of them and they wouldn't be able to escape. Tian replied that he was angry with Xiao and didn't want to kill him, but he couldn't believe Xiao had put Han in danger. Xiao cried and apologized again, saying he regretted it, but they had taken his father and there was no way out. He begged Tian to give them the antidote. Tian told Xiao he would deal with him later, but unfortunately for the intruders, none of them would leave his farm alive. Last night, after Xiao had recovered, Nan was very happy and said how scared he had been. Xiao admitted that he couldn't believe he had actually survived. Nan scolded Xiao, calling him an idiot for eating something that caused his illness. Xiao explained that he had been so hungry that he couldn't resist and found an apple in the cellar that seemed safe. Nan scolded him again for eating something from the cellar, as everything there had been in contact with the ground. Xiao said they had been eating nothing but gruel for days, so he took a chance or he would have starved soon. Nan told him to stop talking nonsense and reminded him that they had received food drops, which included a magical elixir that saved Xiao's life. Nan believed it was a blessing from the gods as they couldn't stand to see Xiao suffer. He suggested they visit their ancestral graves later to thank them for the blessing. Xiao thought that if there were a god, such a disaster shouldn't happen in the world. He believed the elixir had been given by someone who didn't want to reveal themselves. He then noticed a bag of fruit and heard Nan ask if he was hungry. Xiao was shocked that someone had given them so much food while their family had been left starving without basic supplies. Nan reassured him that they had received all the food and promised to get something for Xiao, since he was still recovering from a serious illness and needed to get better. Suddenly, Xiao remembered something and stood up to go outside. Nan asked where he was going, but Xiao just said he would be back soon. Nan insisted that Xiao needed to rest and recover. Xiao then went to someone's house and knocked on the door. The boy inside asked who was there, and when the door opened, he was shocked to see Xiao covered in blood. Xiao explained that his home had been robbed, and he just wanted to check the surveillance video. The boy, Miao, agreed to help and asked what Xiao wanted to check. Xiao showed him the camera and explained it was a 360 degrees wireless monitor. Xiao agreed to help but warned Xiao to hurry since it was his sleep time. As Xiao checked the video, he realized the camera had captured the perfect angle of his alley. He saw a truck and recognized its owner by the license plate. He returned home and Nan asked what he had been doing. Xiao told him he had figured out who saved his life. It was Tian. He had checked the CCTV and the times matched with when Xiao had been rescued. Nan agreed that Tian was a good person, not only giving them food but also saving Xiao. Xiao then asked Nan if he had heard that the Tianrun group was offering a reward for anyone who could find a solution. Nan was shocked and asked what Xiao planned to do. Xiao replied that he was trying to make life easier for both of them in such a difficult world. He questioned how long their food supply would last and what they would do afterward. He asked if Nan still expected Tian to give them more food. Nan slapped Xiao, angry at his ungratefulness. He warned Xiao that if he went to Tianrun, he would break his legs. Xiao said they could only rely on themselves to survive and that he was doing what he had to do. Back to the present, as Chen was thinking about how they couldn't escape their pursuers, he saw two cars blocking his way. He found himself surrounded and was held tightly by someone. Chen, a man from Tianrun Pharmaceutical, introduced himself and said he had a special way to get Tian to meet him. He explained that Tian had the cure for the poisoning epidemic and proposed a partnership. Tian could provide the cure and they would work together to make a profit. Tian asked what would happen if he refused. Chen said Tian had two options: cooperate and make money together, or they would find the cure themselves, using force if necessary. Tian replied that he had discovered the cure by chance, but there was only one dose which he had already used. Chen didn't like Tian's response and called for reinforcements to capture the little girl and feed her poisonous fruit. He also mocked Tian for not having guns, suggesting they could have hurt him without threats. Chen tried to convince Tian to cooperate, but Tian's expression turned serious, and he warned Chen that he should be grateful that they hadn't met at the farm. Chen ignored the warning, confident in his numbers, and demanded Tian's cooperation, promising that Tian and his sister would be spared if they did. When Tian refused, Chen ordered his men to cut off Tian's limbs and leave him alive. Tianrun's men broke through the walls of Tian's farm, causing a loud commotion that disrupted Han's peace. She couldn't watch her cartoons without being disturbed and felt a strong urge to put an end to the noise. Meanwhile, Tian stood alone, fighting off the thugs and throwing them back with great force. Chen, watching the chaos before him, was shocked and confused by what was happening. He recalled how the farm had hidden defenses, so he lured Tian away from it. A while ago, from a distance, Chen observed the explosions in the farm area and suspected explosives were being used as defenses. However, he didn't expect a farmer like Tian to be so powerful. Tian, on the other hand, felt surprised by his own abilities. The radiation-resistant crops he had been eating for a few days had drastically enhanced his speed, strength, bone density, and reflexes. He felt surprised at these changes, realizing that in ancient times people achieved great power through swordsmanship. but he had begun his journey with his fists. An attacker swung a knife at Tian, but he dodged it with ease. As he moved, he felt he was getting closer to unlocking a path to an even greater strength. He decided to create some distance first, aware that his current physical state was far beyond normal. Spotting Chen, Tian aimed his gun at him. Chen, terrified, regretted not bringing a weapon of his own. He hadn't expected Tian to be armed, but he figured that if he could get close enough, the gun would become useless. Chen tried to warn Tian not to provoke the powerful figure backing him, hinting at the consequences. Tian didn't seem to care. He shot at the thugs while leaving Chen alive for a while since he looked useful. As the others ran, Tian hunted them down one by one, leaving none alive except for Chen. Injured, Chen took cover in the woods, hoping to wait until Tian ran out of bullets. As he hid behind a rock, he noticed that the shooting had stopped. He assumed Tian had no more ammunition and felt relieved. Staying hidden, Chen plotted a surprise attack, thinking it was his best chance to defeat Tian. However, Tian quietly accessed his inventory and pulled out another pistol. He climbed to a higher position, aiming down at the rock where Chen hid. Chen was left confused and shocked. He couldn't understand how Tian still had a weapon or why he was so skilled in combat. Back at the farm, the battle had ended. All the intruders lay dead. Hummingbird completed the task Han had assigned to her, executing the last attacker by shooting him in the head. But as she looked at the scene, worry set in. Han feared what Tian would think when he returned. Would he see her as too violent? Would he reject her because of her actions? Determined to avoid that, she decided to clean up the bodies outside to hide the evidence before Tian got back. Chen, who was badly injured, admitted that threatening Tian with a child had been a huge mistake. He begged Tian to stop torturing him and promised to reveal everything if he was spared. Tian told him there was no chance he would be let off, but he gave Chen two choices: a quick, painful death, or a chance to be treated and kept alive to suffer longer. Faced with this, Chen agreed to answer Tian's questions. Tian first asked who was behind the attack. Chen revealed that the mastermind was Liang Tianyu, the CEO of Tianrun Pharma. Chen noted that it made sense considering Liang's ruthless reputation and his involvement in inflating medicine prices. Chen then asked if anyone else was involved. Chen said Liang acted alone and kept the plan secret. Even the top executives in the company didn't know about it. Chen also mentioned that Liang recently had disagreements with the company's vice president. Liang intended to use this crisis to boost his own power, impress the higher-ups at headquarters, and remove the vice president from the Southern City branch. Tian realized that Tianrun Pharma, which controlled the pharmaceutical market in Southern City, was only a part of a bigger organization. He slapped Chen to wake him up and asked if Liang had reported any of this to the headquarters. Chen said no. He explained that the other vice president had connections at headquarters, and Liang feared that if the matter reached them, it would ruin his plan. Since the issue hadn't spread further, Tian figured it could be contained. He then ordered Chen to take him to Liang. Liang received a call from Chen not long after. Chen reported that the target had been captured, but he said the target refused to speak unless Liang and the old man were present. Annoyed, Liang scolded Chen, calling him useless for needing help with such a simple task. Chen apologized, explaining that the target, Tian, remained silent, and that they had already lost a few men trying to get him to talk. Liang finally agreed to meet them, instructing Chen to take Tian to warehouse number 78, promising he would arrive soon. Before Chen could respond, he abruptly hung up, which angered Liang further. Furious at Chen's disrespect, Liang decided to replace him immediately. What Liang didn't know was that Tian had already forced Chen to make that call. Afterward, Tian tied Chen up and swapped clothes with Xiao to prepare for their next move. During the car ride, Xiao thanked Tian for helping him. Tian dismissed the gratitude, saying Nan was just an incidental acquaintance and warned Xiao not to get too emotional. Xiao apologized quietly. When they reached the warehouse, Xiao dragged the bound Chen inside. Liang was already there, accompanied by two men and a tied-up Nan. Seeing only Xiao and Chen, Liang asked where Nan's son was. Xiao explained that the messenger had been knocked out and left in the car, and Chen had a stomachache, so he went to the restroom. Worried that Liang would grow impatient, Xiao said he had brought Nan in first. Liang scoffed at the story, calling them pathetic. He glanced at Nan's bruises and laughed, saying he must not have hit him hard enough the first time. Then, Liang demanded that Nan speak, promising to let him go if he cooperated. Nan stayed silent, knowing that Liang wouldn't let any of them live regardless. When Nan tried to respond, the gag in his mouth muffled his words. Frustrated, Liang cursed at Nan, calling him a dog and kicking him to the ground. Xiao froze, watching the scene with trembling hands. Liang noticed and asking why he was staring. Liang's men continued kicking Nan in the background. Suddenly, Tian crashed through the roof, landing a powerful kick on Liang. Everyone froze in shock. Liang, sprawled on the floor, glanced up and remarked that the wall must have been difficult to climb. Tian aimed his gun directly at Liang, causing his men to back away in fear. Tian instructed them not to move, keeping his gun pointed at Liang. Liang demanded to know how Tian had gotten there, where Chen was, and if Chen had betrayed him. He sneered at Tian, daring him to pull the trigger. Tian, unfazed, mocked Liang's intelligence, questioning how someone like him had become the leader of Tianrun. He then revealed that the injured person they had seen earlier was Chen, who had been taken down by Tian himself. Liang threatened that if Tian harmed him, Nan would be killed on the spot. Tian smirked and asked if he was certain, pointing out that killing Liang was more beneficial than saving someone irrelevant. At that moment, Liang's men attempted to rush forward to protect him. However, Tian quickly shot them both without hesitation. The men fell to the ground, motionless. Xiao, horrified, begged Tian to stop, warning that if Liang died, his father would be killed too. Tian simply shook his head and muttered, "Are you all stupid?" before turning his attention back to Liang. After Tian shot and killed Liang with one bullet, Xiao and Nan knelt before him, expressing both their gratitude and apologies. Nan thanked for not holding Xiao accountable for his actions, and said that simple apologies weren't enough, but he still thanked Tian. Tian reassured them that he didn't believe in blaming others for someone else's actions, and that Nan hadn't harmed him in any way. Nan, however, felt guilty for not stopping Xiao's behavior. Tian told Xiao that constant apologies weren't needed, and advised him to let go of the idea of seeking forgiveness, saying he didn't believe Xiao deserved punishment. He also promised Xiao that he wouldn't harm him without reason, and left the next steps to Xiao. Xiao promised Tian that they knew nothing about what happened and could be trusted. Then he asked Tian how he planned to handle the situation. Tian told them to gather the bodies and stack them together, saying he would bring in the car. Nan asked what Tian planned to do, and Tian replied that they had no choice but to get rid of the evidence. After the bodies were gathered, Xiao asked Nan if Tian planned to burn them. Nan agreed, claiming it wasn't safe to leave the bodies out in the open. When Nan reached out to move Chen's body, Chen suddenly attacked him with a broken piece of glass. Nan managed to dodge the attack, shocked by Chen's sudden burst of energy. Xiao was also surprised by the sudden attack. Chen, who had nothing to lose, said he wasn't afraid to take someone down with him. He swung the broken mirror at Nan again, but this time Xiao stepped in and took the blow himself. Nan was stunned by Xiao's sacrifice. Just then, Tian arrived with the car and hit Chen, killing him. Nan screamed in agony as Xiao collapsed from his injury. Xiao admitted to Tian that he had been right about him. He called himself useless and said he was too afraid to be either good or bad. He blamed himself for putting his father in danger because of his selfish choices. He accepted the fact that he had paid the price for his mistakes and said that he deserved to sacrifice his life. Feeling at peace for the first time, Xiao asked Tian to thank Han for him. He mentioned the candies they received for dinner that night. He wanted to relay his thanks for the sweet candies. With those final words, Xiao passed away. Nan, overwhelmed with grief, sat silently for a while. He then silently stood up, grabbed a piece of broken glass, and approached Chen, who was already dead. He then released his frustrations and agony as he slashed and smashed Chen's face. Afterward, he and Tian set fire to the warehouse, burning the bodies and erasing all evidence before leaving the scene. The scene shifted to Ren, who sat in her office calmly sipping tea. A staff member rushed in, clearly panicked. Ren told them to calm down and explain slowly. The person informed her that something serious had happened. Liang was dead. Ren quickly examined the situation and asked the doctor if they had confirmed the identities of the bodies. The doctor confirmed through DNA tests that 2 of the bodies were Liang and Chen. However, the other bodies didn't match anyone in the genetic database, and no missing persons reports fit their profiles. The doctor explained that due to limited police resources, they couldn't investigate further. Ren dismissed the importance of identifying the other bodies and asked whether the deaths were accidents or murders. The doctor confirmed they were murders. The bodies had bullet wounds, and some showed signs of torture before being stacked and burned inside a car. As Ren inspected one of the bodies, she concluded that whoever had done this was a dangerous and ruthless person. She wondered if the attack was personal, aimed at Liang, or if it was targeting Tianrun Corporation. If it was personal, she planned to celebrate with 2 bottles of red wine that night. But if it was aimed at the company, she knew that the attackers were now her enemies. Soon after, we see Tian bought a small bomb and asked Nan if he truly wanted revenge. Nan agreed, saying he was willing to risk his life for it. Tian placed the bomb on Nan's neck, telling him that he had taken care of the traces that could be fixed, but couldn't promise that Tianrun wouldn't find any clues leading back to him. He reminded Nan not to let what happened to Xiao happen again. He promised that the bomb would go off as planned, without any problems. Nan told Tian not to worry. Tian then went home and called out Han to see what she was doing. Nan was surprised to see Han acting calmly, even with a robot dog in the house and hands and legs sticking out of a mound. Han had set up a crane and a small mound of sand to hide the bodies. She said she was just playing a digging game and hadn't done anything wrong. Tian scolded her after seeing what she had done, which made her admit she had lied because she was scared Tian might hate her if he found out about her violent actions. She worried that he wouldn't want her anymore. Tian reassured her, asking how he could ever not want her. Han explained that it was because she had killed people. Nan wondered if that was the reason Tian reassured her, telling her that no matter what mistakes she had made, he would always stand by her. He reminded her that she was the most important person in his family and that he was happy she knew how to protect herself. He told her to be herself, and he would guide her so she wouldn't feel burdened. He praised her for stopping people with bad intentions from hurting others. Han then said she would blow off the heads of those who would try to hurt Tian. Nan thought the world was changing too fast, and he needed to adapt. Han then told Tian everything. She said she saw people with red color which made her hate them, and ordered Bai to get rid of them. Tian asked if others had colors. Han confirmed that Tian was calming blue, Hei's was friendly green, and Xiao's was also red. She said Nan's color was gray with some green, and she noticed some passers-by were gray too. Tian wondered if the people who had red colors had something in common, thinking they might all have bad intentions toward Han. He asked if she had seen any words or letters around them. Han said she hadn't, and asked when she started seeing colors, and she said it started about a week ago. Tian guessed that her ability had only come after the start of the destruction season, and confirmed that Han hadn't seen the system, meaning she wasn't a player. He thought it might be an evolution from eating radiation-resistant vegetables. Tian wore a wide smile due to this discovery, and Han commented on how scary-looking her brother was. Tian realized that the crops they ate didn't have the same side effects as radioactive crops, but mutations were more likely. They had only eaten the radiation-resistant food for a few days, but their health had improved a lot. Han had also developed the ability to sense others' emotions, almost like a proximity program or a humanoid reconnaissance device. Tian named his ability the Eye of Truth and Han's ability the Eye of Good and Evil. He admired her ability and said it would be useful to him. When Han asked if she could help her brother in the future, Tian said yes and told her that if she saw anyone with red color, she should tell him because she was his best helper. She felt happy when he said this. Tian then asked if she was hungry and offered to cook for her later. Tian made all the food and the three of them sat down to eat. Tian told Han that Nan would also live with them now and help with the farm work. Nan didn't fully understand the situation but agreed to follow Tian's instructions. Han was happy to hear this and asked where Nan would live. Nan said he would build a small hut near the gate to keep watch over it. Han then asked about Xiao, and Nan explained that Xiao had gone to another world to atone for his sins. Han said it seemed like those who wore red and wanted to hurt Tian wouldn't last long. She promised that anyone who tried to hurt Tian or Hei would face hers and Bai's retaliation. Tian praised Han for her cleverness and told her to focus on her meal. Nan thought things couldn't get any more intense than this. His hands were already stained with blood, but he didn't worry anymore. As long as he could help his son get revenge, he was willing to be Tian's watchdog. Meanwhile, a man watched a press conference on TV. The speaker said it was the 15th day after the catastrophe, with 38.6 million deaths on Blue Star and 4.7 million in the Yanhuang Federation alone. The government was moving grain reserves and would soon scale up soilless farming. He told everyone not to panic. A man then approached his father and asked what he could do. The man in wheelchair asked if he had read Ren's report. The son said yes and mentioned that Liang was dead. The man commented on Liang being a good earner but also said the mutation process had sped up. He shared that the military had captured a level 5 mutated beast in the southern border. Bai Jingyan, the son, was surprised and asked how a level 5 beast could have evolved when the highest they could research was level 3. The father explained that, in the deep forest, radioactive plants thrived, and even low-level species attacked and cannibalized each other, speeding up mutations. The father warned that their current technology was vulnerable to natural and unknown evolution. He told Jing to take over the southern lab and said that Ren had discovered many interesting technologies in Liang's hidden experiments. They planned to combine these discoveries with their current resources to quickly extract the virus. Jing agreed with the plan. Ren sat in her office thinking about the records from 2 days ago. They seemed normal, which made her believe that the cause of the death happened during that time. However, the surveillance footage from those days had been deleted for some reasons, leaving them with no clues. It felt pointless to keep worrying about it for now. They needed to focus on deciding the location of the new research institute. Ren also still had to welcome the new leader. She stepped outside and greeted Jing, who just arrived, and she greeted him. After they shook hands and introduced themselves, Ren noticed a man standing behind Jing and asked about him. Jing explained that the man was Kui, his assistant. Jing also mentioned hearing about a good location for the research institute and asked to see it. Ren agreed and suggested a few locations on the city outskirts for him to choose from. Meanwhile, the scene shifted to Tian, who was inspecting his system related to the fish he could cultivate in a pond. Tian had choices ranging from level 1 to level 5 and was impressed by the variety. He noticed that the points needed to buy different types of fish at the same level were the same. Suddenly, he spotted a bluefin tuna and rare pre-apocalyptic ingredients, both available for 500 points, and excitedly asked Han if she liked eating bluefin tuna. She asked if it was the expensive fish that melted in their mouths. Tian confirmed and said they used to be unable to afford much, but now they could enjoy it whenever they wanted. Han happily said she wanted to eat it. Tian gathered his equipment and suggested they use the excavator to dig a fish pond. Han agreed, and they all went with the excavator. Tian, Han, He, and Nan arrived at a clear area, and Tian told them to start digging there. Nan rubbed He and asked about the dog's age, noticing how it had grown a lot. Tian explained that He had already reached adulthood and shouldn't have been growing any bigger. Nan wondered if He had gained weight because of the good food on the farm, remembering when He was small and only reached Nan's knees. Now He was up to their thighs. Tian agreed, realizing that they hadn't noticed He's growth because of seeing it every day. He worried about possible mutations like Bai's, but reassured himself that all the poisonous crops had been removed since Bai's accident. Tian wondered if He had evolved by eating radiation-resistant crops like Han. He decided to keep a close eye on He to prevent any problems. Thanks to the system, Tian noticed some visitors approaching and wondered who it was. As he turned to look, Nan asked what had caught his attention. Tian pointed out 2 men and a woman walking toward them, all giving off a threat level of 8. It was Ren, Jing, and Kui who had been knocking on the gate. Ren asked Jing if it was really necessary to personally inspect the new locations she had picked, stressing the better equipment and security they offered. Jing agreed the farm was in a good location and had enough space, planning to finish the purchase before moving their operations there. Ren accepted Jing's decision but felt that despite his smile he was hard to talk to, even though she had put effort into finding those places. It had been a while since anyone had shown interest, so she doubted anyone would now. Jing told Koi to keep knocking, wanting to get Tian's attention. When Tian arrived and asked what they wanted, Jing recognized Tian as the owner and said they needed to talk business inside the gate. Tian refused, saying they should speak where they were and make it quick as he was busy. Jing agreed, explaining the urgency was due to the chaos outside. Ren, confused by Tian's behavior, introduced herself as the general manager of Tian Run Company and explained they wanted to buy the farm, asking what price he had in mind. Tian was surprised they had already found his farm. Ren said they would meet his price or any other conditions, even offering him a villa in the city center's area if he wanted it. Tian declined, saying he preferred to stay where he was. Ren tried to convince him by mentioning Tianrun's good reputation and suggested he might change his mind. Tian insisted he was happy where he was, saying nothing could change his mind, not even a mountain of gold. Kui, frustrated, slammed the gate, setting off a security alert on Tian's system. The warning showed a minor attack, strength level 2, and asked if Tian wanted to respond. Tian declined. He was surprised that Kui could trigger a serious reaction with just one punch. Jing, angry, scolded Kui and gave him a slap. He reminded him of his teachings, warning him not to act without permission. Kui apologized, realizing his mistake. Tian found the situation interesting. Jing told him not to take it personally, saying Kui was just ignorant. Tian ignored the incident and invited Kui to come closer to the gate. When Kui stepped forward, he quickly struck Tian with a body blow while secretly putting in one of his hummingbirds. Kui fell into his knees, coughing from the pain. Tian joked that Kui had punched his gate, and in return he had punched him back, saying they were even. Tian then told them to leave if they had nothing else. Jing, silent but smiling, didn't argue. Jing wrote a short note to Tian apologizing for the trouble and giving his phone number in case Tian changed his mind. Ren thought Tian's response was rude and didn't expect him to call. She saw that Tian had torn up the note with Jing's number. As they got into their car, Tian thought about how quickly Tianrun had found his farm. He wondered if they had been looking for him or if it was just a coincidence. Tian decided to retrieve the hummingbird guard number 1 and watch their departure, thinking they would meet again soon, especially with only about 10 days left until the next destructive season. Tian noted that the plantation area was producing steadily, and that excavation had started in the aquatic area. He planned to develop a livestock area to prepare for future challenges. After cooking, Tian sat down to eat. Han asked him to try the sesame sauce she had made, praising its taste. Tian agreed, saying it was delicious. Han mentioned how comforting mutton hot pot was in winter, and Tian shared that he also liked its warmth. Nan asked if they were dressed appropriately for the current weather, and mentioned that the land's ability to cultivate was decreasing. Tian hinted that Han had been curious about something but couldn't explain it. Nan understood and assured Tian that he wouldn't ask any more questions. Tian told Nan that the food they were eating wasn't ordinary. It could cause changes in the body over time, such as stronger immunity to the cold, better physical fitness, and even unusual abilities. Tian was eager to see Nan's potential changes. Nan didn't quite understand and thought it sounded like something from a science fiction movie. Tian explained that the apocalypse was like those stories coming to life. He believed ancient powers like fossils could explain it, similar to evolution rather than something supernatural. Nan didn't fully understand but suggested they continue eating. He then asked if anyone had visited that day. Tian confirmed that representatives from Tianrun had come. Nan was surprised and joked that even he, an old man, might benefit from the farm's food. Tian agreed and told Nan to rest while he went out to run errands. Tian then found out that hummingbird number 1 was located in the Harmony Villa district. Meanwhile, Ren brought Jing and Kui to her house and said they could stay the night. She promised to arrange accommodations for them the next day. Jing thanked her and expressed concern. Ren told Jing and Kui they would stay downstairs in one of the 4 rooms, letting them pick whichever they liked. She promised dinner would be brought to their rooms. Jing agreed and went upstairs, telling Ren to rest as well. Meanwhile, Tian's small hummingbird hovered around Ren, which annoyed her. She wondered why there were mosquitoes in such cold weather. After taking a bath, Ren noticed her face looked tired from the long day. She decided to pamper herself with some skincare. While applying a face mask, she stared at herself in the mirror and wondered if a successful and beautiful woman like her could make room for others. Unknown to her, Tian's hummingbird was still flying around the room. Ren noticed the mosquito buzzing around and mistook the sound for a beetle. She opened the window to let it fly out, enjoying the fresh air after the air conditioner had been running. As she opened the window, she saw a masked man outside, hanging from a rope. Both of them were surprised and stared at each other. The masked person leaped into the room. Ren tried to ask for help, but Tian stopped her by covering her mouth. She wondered if there were any bodyguards outside. Tian made her lie down. Ren thought about firing all useless guards. Tian was so strong that she couldn't move or fight him. She had to calm him down first. He warned her that he would let her go, but only if she didn't scream or resist. If she did, he threatened to act faster than her bodyguards with his knife. Ren tried to calm down as Tian let go of her mouth. She told him that there was a lot of money, jewelry, and gold in the bedside cabinet. He could take it all if he didn't hurt her. She promised not to involve the police. Tian said she seemed very cooperative. Ren explained that the world was about seeking wealth, and hurting her would only cause trouble. If he took the money and left quickly, it would be enough for him to buy plenty of food. Tian replied that he hadn't come to rob her. Ren was shocked and asked if he was a pervert making excuses. Tian stopped her and asked if she had sent someone to kill Liang. Questioning why it had taken her so long to find the murderer, Ren realized it wasn't a robbery and wondered if Tian was connected to Liang. She thought about how all of Liang's confidants were dead and wondered where he came from. Tian replied that Liang had done him a favor and now he was seeking revenge. He had heard that Ren was investigating Liang's death and asked her to share all the information she had, as he wanted to investigate too. Ren explained that she and the police were investigating Liang's death, but the clues were limited and they couldn't find the real killer so quickly. Tian suggested that since she had taken over Liang's position after his death, she might be responsible. Ren was shocked, realizing that she had no evidence and had made many enemies. It seemed natural that someone might take advantage of the chaos to get revenge on Liang. She insisted she had no deep grudge against him and his position as general manager wasn't worth killing for. Tian thought Ren was right and acknowledged her intelligence. He couldn't believe they didn't have any suspects. Ren explained that there truly were no suspects. Liang had destroyed all the documents and surveillance related to recent conspiracies. How could she find a suspect when she didn't know who he had been interacting with before his death? It was a difficult situation for her. Tian speculated that Liang had wanted everything for himself, leaving no clues behind. Just when Ren was asking to be let go, Tian heard some incoming heavy footsteps. Tian swiftly struck Ren's neck, making her unconscious. Outside, Kui tried to break down the door while the maid informed him that the alarm system had been triggered, meaning something had happened inside Ren's room. Upon forcibly breaking the door, they found Ren lying there. The maid checked on Ren while Qi inspected the window and told Jing not to let Tian escape. Tian thought about how the strong Kui had managed to break down the door. Tian then was taken aback when Jing remarked that breaking into a girl's bedroom in the middle of the night was rude. Tian saw Jing and asked how he had found him, as he had left no trace behind. Jing explained that when Tian stepped on the gravity-sensing device at the window, he had asked Kui to block the door. If Tian didn't want a face-to-face confrontation, Jing figured he would try to escape through the window, his only way out. Tian admired Jing's cleverness, but wondered if someone like him could stop him. He rushed at Jing, but Jing blocked the attack and countered with his knees. Jing remarked that the bones in Tian's arm were nothing compared to his knee. He calculated that his forearms and ulna should have been fractured from the impact of 700 kilograms, and his carpal joints should have been crushed and dislocated. But there were no signs of injury. Jing then asked if Tian had practiced martial arts, as he hadn't seen any special techniques. Jing demanded an answer, saying that if Tian didn't answer, he wouldn't let him go. Tian's hands trembled as he faced Jing. Tian wondered if Jing had ever trained in martial arts. He couldn't believe Jing had blocked his punch even though Tian's strength was beyond what a normal human could achieve. Fighting someone skilled was always troublesome. Suddenly, they heard voices approaching. People were talking about the noise they had heard. Tian apologized to Jing, saying he didn't have time to waste. Before leaving, he warned Jing that if they met again, he would kill him. Jing jumped forward to attack, but Tian threw dust into his eyes, making Jing cough and blinded. Using the chance, Tian ran off, mocking Jing and telling him to wash his eyes. Furious, Jing struggled to open his eyes and barely saw Tian leap over a wall and disappear, yelling a mocking goodbye. Jing's companions arrived and asked if he was okay and if he had let the boy escape. Still recovering, Jing admitted the boy was clever and had impressive physical abilities. He realized Tian had strong martial arts skills. Jing made a promise to find him. He assured his companions he was fine and just needed to wash his face. One of them suggested chasing Tian, but Jing stopped them. He knew the intruder was too fast to catch. Jing then asked about Ren's condition. A guard claimed she was only knocked unconscious. He suggested giving her medicine from the cabinet when she woke up, as the instructions were already written. A maid asked if they should call the police, but Jing shook his head. He explained that the southern area was too chaotic, and involving the authorities could bring trouble for their allies in the army and police force. The maid agreed and thanked him, commenting on how chaotic the world had become. Just then, Qi arrived with bad news. He had checked Jing's room and found that a hard drive was missing. Jing asked if it was the gray hard drive from his computer. Qi confirmed it was. Meanwhile, Tian returned home. He thought that unplugging the network cable would keep him safe from any issues. Curious about the truth behind Tianrun's actions, he plugged the hard drive into his laptop. He discovered experimental files and realized Jing might be a researcher. As he read, Tian saw that many creatures had died during experiments. Despite this, Jing seemed determined to improve the world. Tian realized the files weren't classified documents from Tianrun but personal research notes. The files described how radioactive food had caused major changes in animals and humans. These changes weren't just destructive, they pushed evolution forward. Jing believed humans had taken the wrong evolutionary path, leading to early deaths. His research aimed to correct this path even if it meant risking human lives. He believed his work could lead to a future where humans would be free from terminal illnesses, birth defects, and weakness. Instead, people would have the strength of wild animals and even living over 100 years. Jing was convinced this future would bring either death or great glory, but humanity would face it without fear. Back with Jing and Qi, their search for the hard drive had failed. Jing guessed that someone had found a way to avoid being tracked or hadn't accessed the files yet. The backup disk wasn't sending any signals either. Qi asked if the hard drive contained important information. Jing dismissed the concern, saying the files were old and difficult for outsiders to understand. But deep down, Jing was worried. He knew there was no turning back now. If anyone read his notes, they might realize he had come to the southern side for something important. Qi mentioned it was strange they had been attacked as soon as they arrived in the area. He suspected the attacker might be someone they knew. Number 7. Jing replied that if Number 7 truly wanted to target them, he wouldn't have sent someone so inexperienced. The intruder had great physical strength but lacked skill. Ahead of him was darkness, and behind him was an abyss. Jing knew they could no longer retreat. Meanwhile, Tian noted the date, November 21, 2025, according to the Yanhuang calendar. Jing's ideas made sense to him, but Tian couldn't accept the arrogance of sacrificing human lives. He wondered if human experiments had already begun. That is the end at chapter 20. Please look at the pinned comment about the next part of the story.